So big tech and the advent of artificial intelligence is front and center this year at the World Economic Forum in Davos.
Train stations on high alert across China. This after authorities revealed the coronavirus can be spread between humans, something they had previously ruled out. Officials there say vigilance is key to stopping the spread.
I think the outbreak is in its early stage in Wuhan. Though there have been more than 100 cases, this is a small number compared to the population of Wuhan, which is more than 10 million. But we need to be on high alert. The outbreak can be totally reversed if measures are taken now.
China has just been removed from the United States currency manipulator list. It's a major step forward in easing trade tensions between the two nations. This move comes just one day before both countries are set to sign phase one of the trade deal.
Exports and making them more attractive. Now, in fact, this is an interesting point. President Trump, back in 2016, when he was running for president, during his election campaign, he promised to label China as a currency manipulator. So this has come from that. He actually influenced Steven Mnuchin to do that last August. So the U.S. says it reversed this decision to label China as a currency manipulator because China has agreed not to devalue its currency. According to U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, as we just mentioned, China has made enforceable commitments to refrain from competitive devaluation while promoting transparency and accountability. Now, the U.S. says the value of the yuan has appreciated since August, meaning that it's actually gone up, and the U.S. now says that China is no longer branded a currency manipulator. Now, this seems to be good, seeing that China is playing ball in the eyes of the U.S. And as you just mentioned, China and the U.S. will be sitting down at the table to sign off on phase one of a de-escalation of the trade war that we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, certainly a move.
A middle-class Caracas neighborhood was the scene of opposition leader Juan Guaido's first rally this year.
If there are gates, fences, or walls to jump, we will jump them. And if we cannot jump over them, we will knock them down.
On Tuesday, the majority opposition faction that he leads forced its way into parliament, just days after Guaido was prevented by soldiers from entering the legislature. The government is now recognizing another deputy as Speaker of the House. Guaido says he won't meet with the Norwegian delegation that's reportedly in Caracas to attempt to restart negotiations that broke down last year between the government and opponents. He says there are no conditions for dialogue. But while Venezuela's political and economic crisis worsens, it's clear that the opposition has lost momentum.
In January of last year, tens of thousands of people mobilized in support of Guaido. 12 months later, either out of fear, frustration, or the belief that the opposition simply doesn't have what it takes to unseat the military-backed government, Guaido has only been able to bring out a few hundred people here.
Nevertheless, he pleaded for Venezuelans not to abandon him.
Today, more than ever, we need to all fight together to open the door to freedom because, I confess to you, we cannot do it alone.
Whether Venezuelans will heed his call and accompany him next week in a new attempt to enter parliament remains to be seen. There's something very unusual in this retail store in Caracas. Prices are all in US dollars. The same goes for this shoe shop. In the country with the world's highest hyperinflation rate, more than 50% of transactions are now being carried out in the currency of what the government calls the evil empire.
The government accepted its defeat against the dollar and has allowed it to emerge from the grassroots level in a spontaneous dollarization process. It's the Venezuelans themselves who've come up with this new payment system.
Everywhere, prices are being calculated in dollars, but it's complicated.
I'm negotiating to see if they can give me one avocado for $1. All right, so we have a deal, because there's no change. Gracias.
Dollarization is a term that describes the US dollar as a substitute for a country's local currency when it becomes almost worthless, as is the case in Venezuela. But salaries and pensions, equivalent to around $5, are still paid in bolívares, which buy very little. So for a great many Venezuelans, like Doña Elisa, it means more famine than feast.
I'm a senior citizen. I've never handled dollars, and so I'm in the clouds when they quote me prices in foreign currency. In December, somebody gave me $1, and I said, oh my, how exciting, $1, what can I buy with it? 2 pieces of bread, that's all.
Her children help her try to understand the increasingly complicated system for using the government's cryptocurrency alternative, the petro, which requires using your thumbprint. But it's not widely accepted and has in fact spiked inflation. Those who can race to electronically transfer their bolívares, which depreciate by the hour, and buy dollars on the black market. Meanwhile, dollars are pouring in, not just from remittances sent by an estimated 4.5 million Venezuelan migrants, but also illegal gold mining, drug trafficking, and money laundering. It's a hard currency free-for-all, but a formal dollarization of the economy is out of the question, since American sanctions bar Venezuela's government from using the U.S. banking system. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, Caracas.
Social media in 2019, a seemingly harmless conversation that deteriorates into nastiness and name-calling.
And now sites like Nextdoor, a place where people are supposed to find community, are turning into a forum for cyberbullying.
And tonight, Denver 7's Macon Lopez is going 360 on negative comments posted on social media. Should they be restricted, or is this just the ugly side of free speech?
There was once a time getting to know your neighbor was a doorbell ring away. But times have changed. Those rings have turned to pings, with more people turning to social media to find a sense of community. Only sometimes that social network can turn into a social nuisance, with neighbors attacking one another over anything. So in the digital age, should people be allowed to say whatever they want on the internet, even if it's bad? A communications expert says there can be consequences to negative comments. Psychologists say this type of freedom can be good and bad, while community groups are coming up with their own rules. First, some context. Social media sites are starting to try to control the collective narrative.
For the last few years, we've been focused on rebuilding our systems for removing harmful content.
In May, Facebook announced an update to how it will enforce community standards, saying it's making progress, but admitting
on bullying and harassment, we have a lot of work still to do.
Instagram is also making changes, announcing a new tool this month to restrict comments in some people. Nextdoor, meanwhile, is testing out a kindness reminder to encourage people to, quote, slow down and think before posting and ultimately be neighborly. The website says it believes healthy debate leads to stronger communities and a more informed society, but that there are guidelines.
Earlier today on the importance of freedom of expression.
To free speech. So he really recast the whole history of the company. It wasn't created as a site to help Harvard students date each other. It was created because of concerns about the Iraq War and a better sense that if people had open conversations online, you wouldn't make decisions like the Iraq War. So he reframes the whole history of the company. And if you then accept that, the debate they're in right now, which is should you be allowed to put false advertisements on Facebook? And the company's position is, yes, we don't want to adjudicate that. If you believe...
It has to be, right? Most of the people in Davos, they stand to make billions of dollars from this, which may explain why I cannot turn on my TV these days or turn on my computer these days without being inundated with commercials telling me how great AI is going to be. But is it? Is it going to be great? Look, I'm not here to tell you what to think, right? That's not my job. But I do want you to do this for me. I want you to listen to two people who were brought together in Davos recently who really, these guys can speak to this, okay? See the guy on the left? That's Ren Zhengfei. He's the CEO of Huawei, a company blacklisted by our government for being kind of hyper successful. And then the other fellow there, his name is Yuval Harari. He's one of the most respected global thinkers and futurists. He's followed by tens of thousands of people who, by the way, he believes that AI will change the world, and not for the better.
I think it really is going to shape the future of humanity and the future of life itself, because the new technologies will soon give some corporations and governments the ability to hack human beings. There is a lot of talk about hacking computers, smartphones, emails, bank accounts, but the really big thing is hacking human beings. To hack human beings, you need a lot of biological knowledge, a lot of computing power, and especially a lot of data. If you have enough data about me, and enough computing power and biological knowledge, you can hack my body, my brain, my life. You can reach a point when you know me better than I know myself. And once you reach that point, and we are very close to that point, then democracy, the free market as we have, and actually all political systems, also authoritarian regimes, we have no idea what happens once you pass that point.
Did you hear that? Hacking human beings to the point where they know us better than we know ourselves. There are only two countries right now with the power to do that, and both are already engaging in sophisticated mechanisms of surveillance that may eventually employ AI technology. The countries, United States, China. That's it. Here's how China's largest corporation responds to this.
When I was born, that was the time when the atom bomb exploded in Japan. When I was 6 or 7, the biggest fear people had was around atom bombs. That was a global fear for that. But if we look at life or history from a distance, we see enormous benefit from atomic energy and radiation application in medicine and others. That brought about enormous benefits to humanity.
So ask yourself this, given what Mr. Renfei just said. Is there a parallel between the nuclear arms race that, for at least my generation, I grew up with it, and the coming AI arms race?